The CEO argued with an airport cleaner, but minutes later, when he boarded his jet, he froze because the cleaner was now sitting beside him as his co-pilot. The private jet terminal shimmered beneath white light, all marble polish and mirrored glass. Expensive shoes clicked across the floor in practiced rhythms of power. Ryan Cole's pace was quicker than most, sharp, decisive, still burning from the conference call that had turned his investors against him. His phone screen reflected the irritation etched between his brows.
"Tell legal to stall the press leak," he barked, then ended the call with a sigh that trembled between anger and fatigue. At that same moment, a yellow mop glided across the tiles.
Ava Reed was finishing her shift, earbuds in, humming quietly to music only she could hear. She moved with the weary grace of someone used to blending into background spaces. Wipe, rinse, repeat. When Ryan strode past, her bucket shifted. A ripple of soapy water leapt onto the toe of his Italian leather shoes. He stopped. For half a second, silence. Then his voice cut through the terminal like glass scraping metal. "Are you blind?" Ava startled, pulling out an earbud.
"I'm so sorry, sir." Sorry?"
He stared at the droplets on his shoes as if they were poison. "Do you even know how much these cost?" The terminal's hum died. A security guard at the far end paused mid-step. A receptionist pretended to check her computer. Ava's cheeks flushed. She bent, dabbing at the floor, not daring to touch his shoes.
"I'll clean it right away. Just keep your bucket away from where people actually work," he snapped. She glanced up.
For the briefest instant her eyes met his, grey, meeting brown, and something wordless passed between them. Not defiance, not fear, just calm acknowledgement like a mirror held to his fury. Then she wrung the mop, finished the streak, and walked toward the maintenance door without another word. Ryan watched her go, jaw tight. The silence she left behind was louder than the outburst itself. He looked at the damp patch on the floor, at the faint reflection of his own face wavering inside it. The moment replayed, her stillness, his tone, the way everyone had turned away from the scene. He sat on the nearest bench, tapping one shoe against marble, trying to summon back the self-righteousness that had carried him through a decade of boardrooms.
It didn't come.
Instead, a strange discomfort settled behind his ribs, foreign and unwelcome. Outside the glass wall, jets glided in slow motion through fog, blue lights blinking like patient eyes. Ryan's phone buzzed again, messages, schedules, numbers, but none of them drowned the echo in his head. "Are you blind? Do you even know how much these cost?" He loosened his tie, exhaled, and for the first time noticed how empty the terminal sounded when no one spoke. Somewhere beyond the partition, a faint tune drifted from the cleaning bay. Ava's humming again, steady and unbothered. Ryan looked down at his spotless shoes and wondered why, suddenly, they felt unbearably heavy. Fog rolled in from the runway like slow-moving smoke, swallowing the flashing lights of parked jets until they became pale ghosts in the distance. Announcements echoed through the private terminal, soft, apologetic tones informing passengers that all departures were suspended until further notice. Ryan Cole stood at the glass wall, phone in hand, watching his expensive itinerary dissolve in a swirl of grey. He checked his watch again, then the clock above the lounge bar. The same 5 minutes seemed to loop endlessly. A storm of cancelled meetings brewed in his mind. He needed to be in San Francisco by morning. Every delay cost him more than time. It cost control, and control was the one thing Ryan couldn't stand to lose. "Grounded, Mr. Cole," the attendant said politely when he stalked to the counter. "Visibility's below safe minimum. We'll update you as soon as conditions improve." He muttered thanks that didn't sound like thanks and turned away. The lounge buzzed with murmurs, a low tide of restless travelers. Somewhere behind him, laughter flickered between two maintenance staff. "Poor girls working double shifts again," one whispered. "The cleaner? Ava?" Another voice replied. Ryan didn't mean to listen, but something in the tone, respect mixed with pity, hooked his attention. Yeah, the one who used to be at SkyTech University.
Top of her class in aviation engineering, can you believe that?
Her dad got sick last year, heart condition. Tuition gone, debts piled up. She took whatever job she could get. A pause, the sound of a coffee stirrer clinking against glass. She still fixes the ground systems when we're short-staffed. Knows the wiring better than half the techs here. Ryan stared out at the fog again, but the words had already lodged in him.
Aviation engineering?
A cleaner with a degree? His memory replayed her calm expression during the argument, the unflinching patience in her eyes. He had read it as submission.
Maybe it was something else entirely. He walked away from the chatter, pretending disinterest, yet his thoughts followed her.
Somewhere down the concourse, the rhythmic squeak of a mop faded, replaced by the faint whir of tools from the maintenance bay. Ryan lingered near the window, catching glimpses of movement in the hangar beyond the tinted glass. A figure, small, focused, stood beside a technician, sleeves rolled up, pointing toward an exposed panel under a wing. Even from a distance, her gestures were confident, her explanation animated. The technician nodded, scribbling notes. It couldn't be her. Yet it was. Ava wiped her hands on a rag, hair tied back, posture steady as the plane's engine hummed to life for testing. The fog lights painted her in halos of gold and grey. For the first time, Ryan felt his earlier insult crawl back like a living thing, hot with shame. He turned away before she could look up. The idea of a cleaner fluent in flight systems unsettled him more than any storm outside. Somewhere in that endless fog, curiosity replaced irritation, and Ryan Cole, who thought he knew how the world worked, found himself wondering who Ava Reed really was. The fog refused to lift. By evening, the once bustling terminal had thinned to a scattering of weary executives and silent staff. Ryan Cole sat in the VIP lounge, the half-drunk espresso on the table gone cold. He scrolled through his messages, assistants, investors, PR managers, all waiting for decisions he couldn't make from this glass prison. The weather radar on the monitor looked hopeless, thick grey bands stretching for miles. "Ladies and gentlemen," came the soft announcement from the dispatcher's desk.
All flights remain on hold except for one emergency corporate route to New York. Departure in 40 minutes. Ryan's head snapped up. One flight?
That was his lifeline. He grabbed his briefcase and strode to the counter. "The corporate emergency jet, can you confirm if it's available for kinetic dynamics?" The dispatcher hesitated. "It's a shared route, Mr. Cole. Priority cargo delivery."
One seat open, but the co-pilot hasn't arrived.
"If he doesn't show, they'll need to find a substitute cleared for Class C jets." Ryan frowned, tapping his finger on the desk.
At this hour?
Good luck finding one. Behind him, the world moved in slow motion, cleaning crews packing up, technicians walking toward the hangars. He sank back into his seat, restless. The clock hands crawled, his patience thinning with every tick. Outside the lounge, a ripple of movement caught his eye. Through the large window beyond the rain-slick tarmac, a figure stood beside the aircraft under floodlights. The yellow vest, the dark ponytail, it was her.
Ava Reed. She wasn't holding a mop this time.
She held a tablet, scanning through diagnostic readouts with focused precision. Two mechanics leaned over her shoulder, nodding as she pointed at the screen. Her mouth moved quickly, issuing calm instructions, and they obeyed without question. Ryan blinked, certain exhaustion was twisting his vision. The chief pilot, Captain Harris, a veteran of 30 years, approached from the other side of the plane. He greeted Ava with a handshake. A handshake, not a nod or a casual hello, but one of mutual respect. Then, incredibly, he handed her a clipboard and motioned toward the cockpit stairs. Ryan leaned forward, trying to see better through the rain-streaked glass. Ava climbed up the narrow stairway and disappeared inside the jet. Moments later, the navigation lights flickered on. A murmur spread through the staff nearby.
"They're testing a replacement co-pilot," someone whispered.
The usual guys grounded in Denver. Ava volunteered. She's certified on smaller aircraft. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. The cleaner? Certified? The plane's turbines groaned to life, blades slicing mist. For a second, Ryan's reflection merged with hers in the glass, his expensive suit beside her oil-stained vest, and he felt an unfamiliar jolt of admiration mixed with disbelief. Minutes ago, she was invisible. Now she was inside the cockpit of the only plane leaving tonight. Ryan's heartbeat matched the rhythm of the engines outside, quick and uncertain. The woman he'd dismissed with a single cruel sentence was about to guide his escape through the storm. The runway lights shimmered like a string of fallen stars through the dense fog. After hours of delay, the dispatcher finally called out Ryan's name. "Mr. Cole, your aircraft is cleared for departure."
"Captain Harris will meet you on board." Relief swept through him. Finally, motion.
He gathered his coat and briefcase, his polished shoes clicking against wet pavement, as he followed the ground crew to the waiting jet. Its fuselage glowed silver under the floodlights, engines idling with restrained power. He climbed the stairs briskly, his frustration softening with every step. Inside, the cabin smelled of leather and jet fuel. A flight attendant greeted him with a practiced smile.
"We'll be taking off shortly, sir."
"Captain requested you make yourself comfortable." Ryan nodded absently and moved toward the cockpit door, curiosity tugging him forward. He wanted to thank the pilot for accommodating the last-minute departure, or perhaps vent about the wasted day. He stepped inside, halfway through his sentence. "Captain, I appreciate—" He stopped. Ava Reed sat in the co-pilot's seat, headset on, fingers moving across glowing switches with crisp precision. The uniform vest was replaced by a fitted navy flight jacket, her name embroidered neatly over the breast pocket. A. Reed. Captain Harris looked up from the control panel, oblivious to Ryan's frozen expression. "Evening, Mr. Cole. We'll be wheels up in 15. Weather's clearing just enough to make a window. Ms. Reed here will handle co-nav and comms." Ryan's mouth opened, then closed again. He could barely form words.
You're flying this plane."
Ava turned, calm as a glass lake.
"Co-flying," she corrected softly.
"Ready for pre-flight, sir?" The faintest hint of a smile tugged at her lips, polite, not mocking. Her tone carried no trace of their earlier encounter, only professionalism. Ryan stepped fully inside, the hum of the cockpit pressing around him. "You're the cleaner," he muttered, as if saying it might make the illusion break. "Part-time mechanic," she replied, adjusting a switch. "And a licensed pilot, second class. We're short tonight." Captain Harris chuckled. "Best substitute I could have hoped for. She saved us a scrub earlier by catching an electrical fault none of my techs noticed." Ryan sank into the jump seat behind them, the irony sinking deeper with every mechanical click. The woman he'd embarrassed in public now sat in command of his safety at 30,000 feet. "Checklist," Ava said evenly, sliding her headset mic down. Her voice, calm and rhythmic, filled the cockpit as she and the captain ran through the pre-flight routine. "Battery power, check. Engine pressure, check.
Nav sync, check." Her focus was absolute.
The fog outside mirrored the haze in Ryan's mind, thick, disorienting, humbling. Each measured word from her lips felt like a mirror held up to his arrogance. When the engines roared to life and the plane began to taxi, Ryan gripped the armrest, his pulse matching the turbine's rhythm. For the first time that day, he was speechless. The woman he'd underestimated completely was now the only thing keeping him airborne. The jet climbed through the last shreds of fog, rising into an ocean of night. Below them, the city lights faded into a trembling glow, above endless black stitched with stars. Ryan sat rigid behind the cockpit seats, watching instruments dance with unreadable numbers. He was used to controlling chaos, with spreadsheets, with money, with words, But this was a world ruled by physics and fate. Captain Harris's calm baritone broke the silence.
Cruising altitude in 3 minutes, Ava's voice followed, steady as the hum of the engines.
Roger that.
Adjusting climb vector to 180. Her tone was calm, professional, utterly focused.
She belonged here, completely at home among dials and data. Ryan found himself watching her hands, precise movements, fingertips gliding across switches as if she were playing an instrument she'd known all her life. It was hypnotic until the plane jolted violently to the left. Coffee spilled across the console. The cabin lights flickered. Well, what was that? Ryan's voice cracked. Turbulence pocket, Ava said, already flipping switches. Microburst from the storm front ahead. The captain checked his display. That came out of nowhere. Pressure drop just spiked. The plane dipped again, the nose tilting forward. Alarms bleated. Ryan grabbed the seat back in front of him, knuckles whitening.
Do something.
We are, Ava replied firmly, her composure slicing through his panic.
Autopilot off. Manual control engaged. Her hands moved in a blur, adjusting thrust, stabilizer trim, and flaps.
Captain, crosswind shear 35 degrees, speed variance 15 knots, compensating. The captain nodded, following her lead. She read the instruments like a story, calling out every shift, anticipating the storm's rhythm. The aircraft rocked violently, thunder flashing beyond the windshield in blinding bursts. Ryan felt weightless, stomach twisting. He'd sat in countless boardrooms, stared down investors and crises, but nothing had ever felt this raw. The world outside was chaos, wind screaming against metal, lightning splitting the dark, and in the center of it sat Ava, calm and composed, her voice steady through the intercom. Altitude stabilizing at 24,000, she announced. Engine steady, correcting your 2 degrees. Each word landed like an anchor, pulling Ryan's fear back into control. Minutes stretched like hours until the shaking softened. The cabin light steadied, and the night grew quiet again. Only the hum of the engines remained. Ava let out a slow breath and switched the autopilot back on. Storm layers behind us, Captain Harris smiled faintly. Nice catch, Reed. You just saved us a nasty drop. Ava nodded, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. Just reading the sky, sir? Ryan sat in stunned silence. The same woman he'd scolded for splashing water on his shoes had just flown him through a storm. Not luck.
Not chance. Skill. For the first time in years, Ryan felt small, in the best possible way. Outside the window, lightning faded into distant silver streaks and the stars reclaimed the sky.
The runway lights of the backup airfield gleamed through thinning clouds like a chain of pearls. The jet touched down with a soft, confident thud, so smooth that even the captain murmured, "Perfect landing, Reed." "Just lucky the wind cooperated," Ava said modestly, shutting down the systems. But Ryan could see the calm precision in her every move. Luck had nothing to do with it. When the engines finally silenced, the cabin filled with a peaceful hum, the kind that follows adrenaline's retreat. The storm was behind them now. Yet inside Ryan, another kind of turbulence lingered, one made of guilt, awe, and something new he couldn't quite name. He lingered as Captain Harris left to file reports. Ava stayed behind, scribbling notes in a maintenance log. Her posture was relaxed, her hands steady, her face lit by the soft glow of the instrument panel. "You always log your own flights?" Ryan asked quietly, stepping closer. Ava glanced up, surprised he'd spoken gently this time.
Always. My mom used to say the sky remembers everything you do up here.
"Best to write it down before it writes you off." He smiled faintly. "Your mom was a pilot?" Ava nodded, her gaze drifting out the windshield.
Cargo pilot.
"She passed when I was 16. My dad never really recovered. Heart condition got worse last year."
I took this job to keep him on his meds. Ryan absorbed her words, each one landing like a quiet truth.
So you studied aviation, then life?
Rerouted you, she gave a small, weary smile.
That's one way to put it.
I'm saving to renew my flight certification.
But training hours are expensive. Until then, I clean floors and fix wiring. It's not glamorous, but it keeps me close to the planes. Her tone wasn't bitter, just grounded, like someone who'd made peace with the climb. Ryan hesitated, then sat in the co-pilot's chair beside her, the same seat she'd occupied while saving his life.
I owe you an apology, he said finally.
For how I spoke to you earlier.
I let my frustration turn into arrogance. That's
Been a pattern. Ava turned to him, eyes soft but steady. You're not the first person who's underestimated me, Mr. Cole. It happens a lot when you carry a mop. He exhaled, a rueful chuckle breaking the heaviness.
Ryan, he corrected.
Just Ryan. Then it's Ava, she said quietly. For a moment they sat in companionable silence, the night pressing softly around them. He looked out the window, runway lights flickering in puddles of rain, and spoke again, voice low. I built a company from nothing.
Made millions. Lost a marriage in the process. I keep wondering if the sky ever looks down at people like me and shakes its head. Ava smiled faintly.
Maybe it just waits for us to look up. Their eyes met, two strangers who had collided in anger and found understanding instead. The hum of the engines had gone quiet, but between them something had just begun to rise. The terminal at the rural airfield was nearly empty, its fluorescent lights buzzing softly against the distant growl of idling aircraft. Ryan waited by the glass doors, coat draped over one arm, watching Ava speak with a mechanic near the hangar. She handed over her clipboard, nodded once, then turned toward the exit with her duffel slung across one shoulder. He stepped forward before she could pass.
Ava, he called, his tone more hesitant than commanding this time.
She paused, her expression calm but tired. I've been thinking about what you said earlier, he began.
About your father, your certification. I can help with that. Ava frowned slightly. Help how?
I could sponsor your recertification, he said quickly. Cover the costs, the hours, whatever you need. Or if you prefer, I could fund your father's surgery directly.
No strings attached. For a moment, she didn't speak.
The distant hum of a jet filled the silence between them. Ryan expected gratitude, maybe relief. Instead, Ava gave a small, thoughtful smile, the kind that wasn't unkind, but carried quiet steel. I appreciate that, she said softly. But no. The word hit harder than he anticipated. No, she nodded. You've already done enough. You gave me a chance to prove myself tonight, more than most people ever would. But if I take money for something I didn't earn, it stops being mine. Help me earn it, not owe it. Ryan stared at her, caught between admiration and disbelief. You'd rather struggle?
I'd rather stand on my own legs, she said simply.
That's what flying's about, trusting the lift you built yourself. Her words landed with precision, like small truths cutting through the fog in his mind. Ryan had spent years buying solutions, companies, loyalties, silence, but this woman refused to be bought. It wasn't pride, it was something purer. He tried to respond, but the right words never came. Ava hoisted her bag higher and offered a final nod. Take care of yourself, Ryan, and thank you for listening. Then she was gone, her figure shrinking in the rain as she crossed the tarmac toward the staff parking lot. The reflection of her neon vest shimmered briefly in the puddles before fading into darkness. Ryan stood alone, the night air thick with the smell of fuel and damp asphalt. For the first time, he didn't feel like the man in control of every variable. He felt like someone standing at the edge of a runway, watching something rare take flight. Integrity. Later, in his hotel room, the city lights stretched across the horizon like restless thoughts. Ryan stared into the mirror above the sink. The man looking back seemed smaller, quieter, stripped of the layers he'd built to protect his ego. He loosened his tie, remembering her words. Help me earn it, not owe it. Somewhere deep inside, a decision began to take shape. This wasn't about charity anymore. It was about change, and maybe, for the first time, he wanted to earn something too. The skyline of downtown glimmered through the morning haze, but Ryan barely saw it. From the 43rd floor of Coal Dynamics, the city stretched like a kingdom he no longer trusted. Inside the boardroom, tension hung thick as jet fuel. Executives murmured in low voices, the air heavy with crisis. A global supplier had defaulted overnight, halting production on the company's new navigation software. Investors were panicking, stock tickers bleeding red. Every eye in the room turned toward Ryan, the man who had once built his empire on certainty. "Mr. Cole," one board member said, voice clipped, "we need a statement within the hour. The media's calling this negligence." Ryan rubbed the bridge of his nose. "We'll fix it," he said automatically. But his voice lacked its usual authority. He glanced at the data projected on the wall, failure points, missed safety verifications, unchecked alerts.
Numbers didn't lie.
Somewhere along the line, people had stopped listening to instinct. A sharp voice from across the table broke his thoughts. "We've been cutting maintenance reviews for months," said Lila, his operations lead. "To save costs. You signed off on it." The words landed like a slap. Ryan had built efficiency on speed and control, never empathy. And now the system he'd streamlined was fracturing at its weakest human link. As the meeting spiraled into accusations and blame, Ryan's mind wandered back to turbulence, to lightning, to a calm voice saying, "Autopilot off."
Manual control engaged. Ava had taken chaos and turned it into clarity.
She hadn't panicked. She had acted. When the room finally fell into uneasy silence, Ryan straightened, eyes clearer than they'd been in months. "We don't need another PR spin," he said. "We need better systems and people who know how to handle pressure when things break." Lila frowned.
"You mean more engineers?" "Not just engineers," Ryan replied.
"People who've been in the field, who see the problems before they hit the spreadsheets." He paused. "I have someone in mind." His assistant Daniel blinked. "Someone from the aviation team." Ryan hesitated just long enough for curiosity to ripple around the table. "Her name's Ava Reed." Daniel raised an eyebrow.
"The cleaner from the terminal?"
His tone carried a trace of disbelief that made Ryan's jaw tighten. "Not anymore," Ryan said quietly. "She's a certified pilot, mechanical tech, and the reason I'm sitting here at all. She sees systems as living things, not just charts. I want her consulting on our safety redesign." The room fell into stunned silence. "Sir," another executive began cautiously, "with respect, the optics are exactly what we need," Ryan interrupted.
"Real competence. Real integrity."
"That's the story we'll stand behind." No one spoke for several seconds. Then Lila gave a small nod, half curiosity, half admiration. "I'll make the call," she said. As the meeting dispersed, Ryan stood by the window, watching sunlight break through the city's smog. For the first time, the reflection staring back wasn't a CEO defending an empire. It was a man rebuilding one, piece by honest piece. The convention hall pulsed with light, sound, and scrutiny. Dozens of investors filled the front rows, cameras trained on the stage, where Coal Dynamics was unveiling its newest aviation control module, a sleek black console said to revolutionize flight safety. Ryan stood beneath the blinding spotlights, flanked by a wall of digital screens and a sea of expectant eyes. This was supposed to be his company's redemption arc. After weeks of bad press, today's live demo would prove Coal Dynamics was still at the cutting edge. But fate, as always, had its own sense of timing. Halfway through the presentation, as the automated system booted up for the live demonstration, the console flickered and died. The massive display behind him froze on an error code. A low murmur rippled through the audience. Ryan's chest tightened. The technicians backstage scrambled, but the error persisted. Every camera caught the flashing red indicator that screamed failure. The investors began whispering to each other, their expressions shifting from interest to impatience. "Sir, system just locked. one tech whispered urgently into Ryan's earpiece. It's a power feedback loop. We might have to abort. Ryan's pulse pounded. He could already imagine the headlines. Coal Dynamics fails live demo, stock plummets. Then, through the haze of panic, a memory surfaced. Lightning splitting the clouds, a calm voice saying, "Autopilot off." Manual control engaged. He turned toward the side of the stage. Ava stood among the engineering team, wearing a dark utility jumpsuit and a visitor's badge clipped to her pocket. Her expression was steady, unreadable. "Get her up here," Ryan said suddenly. "What? She's not on the roster," his assistant protested. "She is now." The crowd watched in confusion as Ava walked on stage. Her boots clicked softly against the metal floor, confidence radiating from every step. Ryan stepped aside without a word, handing her the mic. "Systems in standby," she said, crouching beside the console. "If we restart blindly, we'll fry the backup drive. We need to bypass the ground circuit first." She spoke with clear, calm authority, the kind that silenced a room not with volume, but precision. Ryan knelt beside her, following her instructions like a student. "Detach the auxiliary feed," she said. "Now hold, run diagnostics on channel 2. Technicians moved quickly under her direction. Within minutes, the screens behind them blinked back to life, the error code vanishing. The crowd erupted in applause as the interface pulsed green. Ava straightened, wiping her hands. "System secure."
Manual override tested. Ryan smiled, a real one, unguarded.
"Ladies and gentlemen," he said, stepping forward again, "that's Ava Reed, our new systems consultant. She just saved the demo and the company." The applause deepened into cheers. Phones were already out, capturing the image of a CEO taking quiet direction from his former cleaner. By the time the clip hit social media, it was already viral. CEO humbled, cleaner turned, pilot saves company live on stage. In that moment, Ryan didn't care about optics or stock prices. He only felt pride, not in himself, but in the person who had just turned his company's greatest embarrassment into its rebirth. The news cycle exploded overnight. Every major outlet ran a variation of the same headline. Cleaner turned pilot saves Coal Dynamics live on stage. Some called it poetic justice, others a corporate miracle. Within hours, Ava Reed's name was trending across platforms. Journalists dug deep, unearthing her past, the gifted aviation student who had left her degree unfinished after her mother's fatal crash, the daughter who'd traded cockpits for cleaning carts to pay for her father's treatments. Her story, once hidden in shadows, now blazed across every feed. Ryan watched it unfold from his office the next morning. Screens around him flashed her image, smiling awkwardly beside the console she'd resurrected, headset slung around her neck. Every time he saw her face, something inside him steadied. This wasn't just good publicity, it was justice long overdue. When Ava arrived later that afternoon, escorted past a crowd of reporters, she looked uncomfortable with the attention. "You wanted to see me?" she asked, stepping into his office. Ryan gestured toward the seat across from him. "I wanted to offer you something more official than a thank you." Her eyebrows lifted. "I'm listening." He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were documents, training program outlines, certifications, and a contract bearing her name. "I'm establishing a new division here, Coal Flight Academy," he said. "It'll train both pilots and engineers in crisis management and real-time diagnostics."
"I want you to lead it." Ava stared at the folder but didn't touch it.
"You're serious?" "Completely." He leaned forward, sincerity replacing his usual polish. "You've seen both sides of this industry, the ground and the sky. That perspective's worth more than any degree." She hesitated, fingers brushing the edge of the paper. "Ryan, I don't want this because people feel sorry for me."
"I don't want to be your redemption story," he smiled faintly, shaking his head.
"This isn't pity, it's recognition.
"You didn't need a second chance. You earned it."
You just needed someone to stop looking down long enough to see it." The room went quiet. Outside, flashes from reporters' cameras painted brief bursts of light against the glass walls. Ava finally opened the folder, scanning the proposal with slow, deliberate eyes, you know, she said softly. My mother used to say the sky has a way of humbling everyone who flies too high. Ryan chuckled, voice low. She sounds like someone I would have needed on my board. Ava looked up, meeting his gaze. There was no tension now, only mutual understanding, the kind forged through storms. She extended her hand. No more apologies, she said. Just work worth doing. Ryan took her hand firmly. Deal. For a long moment they sat there. Two people from opposite worlds bound by the same truth. That humility, not hierarchy, was what kept them both airborne. When Ava finally left the office, the sun had broken through the haze outside, spilling gold across the runway beyond the glass. Ryan watched her walk toward the hangar, not as a janitor or even a pilot, but as someone who'd reclaimed the sky entirely on her own terms. The dawn sky burned with streaks of gold and lavender, the kind of morning that felt like forgiveness. The new Coal Flight Academy hangar buzzed with quiet excitement, rows of bright-eyed students, most from backgrounds that had never dreamed of standing this close to an aircraft, lined up to watch the inaugural charity flight. Cameras flashed, banners fluttered, and the logo gleamed proudly across the hangar doors. Wings for everyone. Ava Reed stood beside the jet that would lead the day's training run. Her crisp Navy flight uniform bore the insignia of chief instructor, and her posture carried both authority and ease. She checked gauges and flight plans with the same quiet focus that had once steadied a storm-tossed cockpit. A familiar voice broke her concentration. Permission to board, Captain? She turned. Ryan Cole stood at the foot of the stairs, his expression open, light, almost boyish. His own uniform, lighter grey, marked with the honorary co-pilot badge, made the moment poetic. Permission granted, she said, with a grin. As he climbed the steps, a murmur rippled through the gathered students. The CEO himself flying as co-pilot under the woman who had once cleaned his floors. It was a sight no one would forget. The symbolic inversion wasn't staged. It was genuine. Inside the cockpit, sunlight streamed across the panels, turning metal into gold. Ryan strapped in beside her, running through the checklist she'd written herself. Fuel?
She asked. Full, he replied. Navigation? Aligned attitude?
He smiled faintly. Improving daily? Ava laughed, the sound light and genuine. Outside, the students waved as the engines roared to life. The tower cleared them for departure. As the plane began to roll, Ryan glanced sideways.
Feels strange sitting here instead of in charge? Ava adjusted her headset.
Maybe that's the point. You can't control the sky. You just learn to fly with it. He nodded, her words sinking deeper than she intended. The aircraft accelerated, tires humming over the tarmac until gravity finally loosened its grip. The city fell away beneath them, shrinking into patterns of light and river. For a while, neither spoke. The only sound was the rhythmic heartbeat of the engines and the soft crackle of the radio. Then Ryan broke the silence. You know, the day we met, I thought I was teaching you a lesson about respect. Ava looked out the window, smiling softly. Turns out you just didn't know which way the lesson was going. Their eyes met briefly, a glance that carried gratitude, history, and an unspoken peace. Below them, the world glimmered like a reflection they'd both outgrown. Above, the sky stretched infinite and forgiving. Ryan's voice came through the intercom, steady, but tinged with awe. Captain Reed, what's our altitude? 30,000 and climbing, she replied, her tone proud yet serene. Good, he said quietly. Let's stay there a while. As the sun rose higher, two silhouettes shared the cockpit, once divided by pride, now bound by purpose. The clouds parted before them, a living metaphor for everything they had weathered and everything still waiting beyond the horizon. The late afternoon sun melted into soft amber over the airfield, stretching shadows long across the tarmac. The charity flight had returned safely hours ago. but a faint hum of life lingered, the clatter of tools, the distant laughter of students, and the rhythmic sweep of brooms across polished floors. From the observation deck, the narrator's voice slipped in like a gentle breeze, quiet yet certain. In the sky, rank disappears. The air doesn't care who you are, only whether you can hold steady when the wind shifts.
Up there, pride weighs you down. Only trust keeps you aloft. Down below, Ava walked alongside her father, who leaned lightly on a cane, but moved with new strength.
His eyes gleamed with pride as he looked out toward the hangars. "You made it, kiddo," he said, his voice warm and rough from years of wear. "Your mother would have loved this." Ava smiled, tears bright in the corners of her eyes. "She's probably up there somewhere," she whispered, glancing at the horizon, "making sure we're keeping our altitude." Her father chuckled, squeezing her hand. "You always were the one who looked up instead of ahead." Across the runway, Ryan stood beside a group of interns sweeping the hangar floor. His jacket hung over a chair, sleeves rolled, shirt slightly smudged with dust. One of the students hesitated, broom in hand.
"So you don't have to—" "I know," Ryan interrupted with a grin.
"That's why I should." The interns exchanged glances, smiling shyly as he swept alongside them, each stroke of the broom steady and unhurried. Gone was the impatient CEO from months ago. This man listened more than he spoke, asked questions, and occasionally laughed at himself. Ava watched from a distance, her father following her gaze. That the man who used to think the world revolved around him?
"That's him," she said softly.
Turns out the world got bigger once he stopped standing in the center of it. The sun dipped lower, turning the hangars gold. The students gathered to wave goodbye, and Ryan looked up just as a pair of jets soared overhead, training planes from the academy, slicing clean trails across the sky. Two contrails crossed perfectly in the fading light, an X of silver against the orange wash of dusk. "Maybe that's the real miracle," the narrator continued, voice tender. "That when two lives collide, no matter how different, they can change direction without falling." Ava tilted her head back, following the twins' streaks until they disappeared into blue. Her father leaned beside her, content, while Ryan approached from behind, hands in his pockets, simply watching the same patch of sky. For a moment, none of them spoke. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of lessons learned, apologies accepted, and a peace neither of them could have reached alone. Up there are no CEOs or cleaners, just people, learning to share the same sky. The camera panned upward one last time. Two contrails crossed above the clouds, glowing silver against the rising sun, and then fade to light.